Okay, picture this. It's March 2026, and the world is absolutely on edge. There's a regional conflict flaring up between Iran and Israel, and it's thrown global markets into total chaos. But something just doesn't add up. The panic we're seeing is way, way bigger than the actual physical disruption on the ground. So today, we're going to dig into the data and try to find the hidden force that's really pulling the strings here.
So what is the real price of a conflict like this? It's really easy to just look at the obvious stuff, right? Supply chains, the number of oil barrels. But what we're about to find out is that the true cost, the thing that's really driving the markets is, well, it's something a lot harder to get your hands on.
All right, first up, the number that grabbed all the headlines and had everyone freaking out. Oil prices didn't just rise, they exploded, blowing right past $110 a barrel. Now, normally, when you see a spike like that, it means one thing, a huge physical shortage of oil. But was that actually what was going on? And at the exact same time this was happening, traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, this is a massive artery for global oil. It just nosedived. We're talking a 90% plunge. So on the surface, you put those two things together and the story seems simple, right? No ships means no oil, and no oil means sky-high prices. Easy. But the real story is it's a lot more complicated than that.
And this right here is the heart of the problem we're looking at. The market's reaction was just completely, wildly out of proportion to what was actually happening on the ground. The old economic models, the ones we've always used, they just couldn't explain this massive gap. It just didn't make sense. So what are we missing? What's the hidden piece of the puzzle?
Well, to find that missing piece, we have to kind of step back and look beyond the usual way of thinking. Simple A causes B, cause and effect. It just doesn't cut it anymore. And that's because those old models are missing the single most powerful, most volatile ingredient in any market, plain old human emotion. And this really shows you the difference. Over on the left, you've got your traditional analysis. It just draws a straight, clean line from an event straight to a market reaction. It's simple, it's neat, and it's just not working anymore. Now look at the right. This is a new approach called structural modeling. And you can see the path isn't direct at all. There's this crucial thing in the middle, a mediating variable that completely changes the game. And this quote, it just absolutely nails what that thing in the middle is. It's a fear premium. Think about that. This isn't about counting the number of barrels that aren't getting shipped. No, this is about the market pricing in the worst possible thing that could happen. It's pure psychological pressure, and it has totally unhooked prices from physical reality. Okay, so if fear is the missing piece, how in the world do you measure that, right? It seems impossible. But this is where it gets really interesting. We're going to look at a new way to see these hidden connections, a way to actually turn that abstract feeling of anxiety into cold, hard data. So here's that new model in action. Let's break it down. You start with the conflict's intensity. That's your input. The outcome, the thing at the very end, is global inflation. But look at that critical step in the middle. Geopolitical risk. That's the engine. It takes the initial shock of the conflict and just amplifies it. The conflict itself doesn't directly cause inflation. It creates risk. And it's the risk that really sends prices soaring. All right, so this all sounds good, makes sense in theory, but it brings us right back to that really tough practical question. How do you actually measure something as fuzzy as geopolitical risk or investor anxiety? How do you take a feeling and stick a number on it? The secret is this concept from statistics called a latent variable. It's basically something you can't measure directly. You can't hold fear or uncertainty in your hand, right? But you can measure the effects it has. It's like the wind. You can't see the wind itself, but you can see the leaves rustling and the trees bending. You measure its shadow. So, to measure this geopolitical anxiety, we look for its shadows in the real world. What are they? Well, first we look at the VIX index. That's basically the market's fear gauge. Then we track war risk insurance premiums. That's the literal price people are willing to pay for safety. And finally, we watch the price of gold, because that's where everyone runs when they get scared. When you see all three of those things spiking at once, you can be pretty sure anxiety is through the roof. And so when you take all that data and you plug it into this new model, you get this. And honestly, this might be the single most important number in this whole analysis, $18.50. Of the current high price of oil, $18.50 of it is nothing but pure, quantified fear. It has zero basis in actual supply and demand. It is, quite literally,
the price of anxiety. Okay, so let's see how this whole theory plays out in the real world. And this situation in the Strait of Hormuz is the perfect case study. This is a story about a blockade, but not one you can see. This timeline really says it all. The conflict kicks off in late February, but the real game changer, the critical event, happens in early March. And it wasn't the Iranian Navy showing up with warships to close the strait. No, it was a bunch of major insurance companies who just pulled their coverage. And by March 11th, with absolutely no one willing to underwrite the risk of sailing through there, commercial traffic just stopped, dead in the water. And here is the mechanism that did it. Just look at that spike on the chart. War risk insurance premiums went from basically nothing, a tiny fraction of a percent, to over 1% of a ship's entire value. That is not a small adjustment. That is a financial sledgehammer. It made sending a ship through the strait completely, economically impossible. And this really gets to a huge insight here. The blockade wasn't made of steel, no mines, no warships. It was made of spreadsheets and liability clauses. The global economy was being strangled by the withdrawal of insurance. It's a perfect and kind of scary example of one of these mediating variables having a massive, catastrophic effect in the real world. So, what does all this mean for us? Why does it matter? Well, this isn't just some interesting academic theory. This understanding demands that we basically throw out the old playbook and write a completely new one for how we navigate today's financial world.
So here's the new playbook. Step 1, stop just looking at oil prices. You need to hedge against the mediator. You track those risk indicators we talked about, insurance premiums, the VIX. They can give you a heads up, maybe 48 hours before the market moves. Step 2, start treating fear like a real, tangible asset. Put a number on it, because as we've just seen, it has a very real price tag. And finally, step 3, use this kind of modeling to hunt for other hidden connections in the market before they jump out and bite you.
And all of this leaves us with one last kind of massive question. For centuries, we figured out how to put a price on goods, on services, on our time. But now we figured out how to put a price on fear itself. So if anxiety is now a quantifiable asset, one that can move the entire global economy, what does that really mean for how we value and price our own future?